Hi there and welcome back to Vietnam, our temporary base before I move into my new property in Japan, where I am, as I'm sure you know, if you're either following this link or if you're following on from our New Beginning playlist, which if you're not, it's in the description below, all of the videos, all of the songs in this album I've done a review video for. Wow, I can't even follow my words anymore. Anyway, it's time for Beauty and the Beast. Now, this album has been pretty much hard all the way through. I know the last two tracks are pretty hard going, so I'm wondering, is this going to be the one which is contrast? Because this has been a really interesting album, actually. I've really loved how different the writing is. I know for a staff-written album, because this isn't one of the ones they wrote themselves, it's earlier in their career. I know this was trying to prove a more rocky point after their first slightly popular album. I know that this is one of those things where I understand they've got a lot of variations between the songs. There's nothing wrong with them going hard all the way through, but I'd like to just hear a bit of variation on this album. Just because that's one thing I think it's lacking so far, is everything is so hard. And I know the last two tracks are quite hard. I hope that this one will be the difference, but either way, I'm sure we're going to enjoy it. Anyway, enough whinging from me. Let's talk after I've heard the song. This is Beauty and the Beast by BAND-MAID. This sounds so much like early Offspring. This chorus feels more like it was written like an anime theme tune. It's got that kind of dramatic change in direction. And it's much more along the sort of overly melodic side than BAND-MAID usually go for. That was a weird bit of production. I love the energy of the chorus, but it's not very catchy. I mean, it doesn't really stick with me very well. But it develops nicely. I mean, it's like it's well written. It's very technically good, but it just doesn't seem to stick with me. That's more BAND-MAID. Nice. Oh, I wanted to hear more of that. I was enjoying where that was going. Back to the really Offspring-like bit. It's a pretty good song, actually. For an album track, near to the end of the album, it's good. yeah, not too much to complain about that one. Now, if we're going to be completely objective about it, I would say that is actually a very well written song in many ways. Like I say, it's got much more melodic development than we usually hear from BAND-MAID. Again, I know we've commented on this a few times, but it comes up a lot in our comments when we had discussions about BAND-MAID before, not plural. We've had discussions about BAND-MAID before, is that they are perhaps more rhythmically proficient than they often are melodically. It's not to say that they don't have like really great, you don't have a great voice from Psyche and even Miku as well. It's just that often it's those are not the bits where they experiment so much. This is a much more interesting melodic song than they usually do, and actually in a lot of ways this is quite brave. It has a lot of changes in tone, a little change in tempo when they go into the bridge was really fantastic. Like I said, I wish they developed that more because that was going in a really interesting direction. It was dark and heavy, but it was kind of cool as well. It was very riff based, but not in their usual way. It went for much more of a deep and throaty, growly sort of direction. There was so many things to like about this song. However, I do think that the fact that it's an album track is not a surprise to me because it does kind of hit that little area where I think we can all spot this on albums by bands we love or even we don't love, but we can all spot this thing that a lot of bands do where they have a song which is really quite brave, quite experimental, does quite a lot of things, or at least really sounds like they're trying, but ends up never being anything more than an album track simply because nothing quite sticks enough. Nothing quite stands out enough. Like, for example, with this, the verses were cool. I like I said, really that whole riff that he used in the verse and the intro really reminds me of like an old school Offspring album. I can imagine that on like Ignition or Smash or something like that. I really love the energy they were going for there, but that never quite developed enough in its own right to make it a sort of like a punky song. The chorus was good. I liked how it developed. It had a lot of energy, but it was never quite catchy enough to be catchy in its own right. The bridge was really cool, but that never really developed into much itself. It's like it was a bag of really good ideas that fitted well together, and yet none of them seemed to take the lead enough to really give the song identity, if you know what I mean. So this is a good song that I would enjoy. It's one of those ones where I probably wouldn't seek it out, but if I was sitting down and listening to this album and this track came on, I'd go, oh yeah, I remember this one. And plus it's a cool little bit of variation, considering that it goes between Don't Apply the Brake, which is a very simple song, and Don't Let Me Down, which is again a very high energy song like this, but again quite simple. It adds a nice little refreshing change to the tone of things. So yeah, good actually. I do like this. No criticism for this really. Just I can understand that it doesn't really develop in any particular department enough to be like a standout song in its own right. So yeah, I would say the only shame here is at this point I now know, having already heard the last two tracks already, and like I say, you can see my reviews of those if you follow the album review playlist in the description below, which will finish with my conclusion of the album, my overall review. I already now know all the tracks on this album, and I know that there isn't anything light on here. It's all heavy. Some songs are a little bit darker, some songs are a little bit happier, but overall it is all kind of heavy, and that does leave me a little bit sad that they didn't really show the level of variation on this album that they showed in the first album. I understand that they're trying to, I'm not going to say appease, but they're trying to appeal to more of a pop fan, a rock fan, heavier, harder rock fan basis. But isn't that always the case that hard rock tends to allow you less tonal variation than pop does? So yeah, in a way I do miss the fact that first album made in Japan managed to elicit more different feelings, more different emotions, and had more of a surprise. You never know what each track's going to be. This one, yeah, to a certain degree that is true, but the one thing you know is that each of these tracks is hard, and you kind of know it's going to be hard every time you press play. So that was a little bit of a disappointment, but I would say that overall Beauty and the Beast at least proves that each of these tracks does have an identity writing-wise. They've really done a great job of showing each song can show heavy in a different way. In fact, the only two songs I'd say are particularly similar actually they're not that similar overall, but in the tone is the first two ones, which are just so riff-based that that's kind of all they are. But good stuff. And so yeah, I'm going to let you guys follow on the playlist. Like I said, if you're not already watching through the playlist, check it out in the description below. Check out my review for Don't Let Me Down and Shake That. If you've already seen those because they were done before this, then you can skip ahead in the playlist to my conclusion for the album, where I'm going to give you some interesting thoughts on what I think it is overall. But for now, from here in our base in Vietnam until we go back to Japan, I want to thank you very much for viewing. Recommend that, obviously, as always, you can subscribe, you can like, you can dislike it. If you dislike or otherwise, definitely get in the comments and tell us why, so we can continue the discussion, because let's face it, music is subjective to opinion after all. And the best thing is that you can get more into the discussion if you go on our Discord or our Reddit, also linked below, our Facebook and our Twitter, also linked below. Or you can be really nice if you like us and get on our Patreon, also linked below. So for now, from Vietnam, as I said before, ciao ciao.